everybody. Welcome to Walking with Christ. We are excited to have you tonight. My name is Elder Drew Stradling. I'm a missionary here serving in the Rockland, California area. And I'm here tonight with my good friend, Elder Zackary Lockhart. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and a background of kind of who you are?
Yeah, like you said, I'm Elder Zack Lockhart, and I'm serving in Roseville right now. I really love a lot of different things, but something that I've always really had a passion for is music. I love playing the piano and singing.
He's pretty good at it.
Yeah, you are too, though.
We'll see.
But that's something that I've really gotten into while I've been serving as a missionary as well, being able to use that to increase my ability to share the gospel, be able to help people feel Jesus Christ and feel God's love through music. And that's really what I love to do, is to help people just feel God's love, because it's been so present in my life, and it's just been so necessary for me, and I don't want anybody else to have to go without that.
I like that a lot. We've talked a little bit before about his story, and I'm super excited for everybody here to hear it. It's really cool. I wanted to go back to what you said about God's love being present. I found that that's kind of the challenge of what we go through, is feeling God's love presently at certain times. What are you referencing when you say that, like, the feeling of God's love being present in your life? What has that been like for you? Where have there been times where you've been presently in God's love?
That's a good question. I think it's mostly been noticeable in, like, the hard times, because in the good times you don't often notice it as much, because everything's just kind of going fine, and of course we still need to focus on Christ and get closer to Him, because otherwise we won't know how to do that when the hard times come. But I think when I've really noticed it has been in the times when I know I can't do it on my own, and I really need to turn to Him, and then I always am able to have some sort of experience where He shows His compassion for me. And there will be sometimes really small miracles, but there will be something that'll at least get me through that day.
Mm-hmm. So why don't you share kind of what a decent-sized miracle in your life has been that we've talked about before? Do you want to share your story, I guess?
Yeah, so I've talked about this before with you and with other missionaries, with people that I've talked to, but I had cancer when I was 17. At least that's when it was diagnosed. I had a big lump on the side of my neck. It was a really rare form of lymphoma.
How big was the bump?
It was like a half a baseball-ish.
Like bullfrog, basically?
Yeah, when I opened my mouth all the way, I could feel it. I couldn't quite open my mouth all the way. It was big.
I didn't know it was that big, actually.
It was. Yeah, that's what got us through. We were actually on a vacation with some friends, and I had just I had noticed it when it was really small, and I'd asked my dad about it, and he was like, we'll check it out if it keeps getting bigger, which later the doctor said that's what they would have said too.
Yeah.
But we had some friends, and they were like, you should get that checked out, because it might be cancer. Kind of jokingly they were talking about it, but then
they were joking.
Yeah.
And then actually,
yeah, we went and did some tests. They did a needle biopsy where they poke a needle a bunch of times into it, and then yeah, it was really sore after. But they couldn't figure out what it was, but they were like, it's probably cancer, because it's nothing else.
Mm-hmm.
But we can't actually tell you what it is, because we can't figure it out. So then we went to a bigger hospital that was 2 hours away. And
from where?
From Wisconsin. I'm from Wisconsin. And so we went from a hospital that was pretty close to our house to one in Madison, Wisconsin.
Right.
They have some really good children's hospitals, and I was 17, so I was still a child. And so they did a biopsy again, and they figured out that it was cancer, and that the reason they hadn't been able to figure out before, because only 100 people have had that form of cancer.
Across, is this in the U.S., or is this
it was discovered in the 90s, and 100 people have had it since then. There have been 100 reported cases. Maybe other people have had it, but it didn't get treated, I guess.
That makes sense.
So yeah, 100 people have had it, so they didn't know what it was. It's a really, really weirdly presenting mutation of lymphoma. So yeah, that's what they found out, and then that kind of started the whole process.
So you were 17 years old when this happened.
Mm-hmm.
What was the timeline from like how long did it take from the first kind of like we should get this checked out to the diagnosis of cancer? How long was that time frame?
Ooh. I don't remember. I think it was, I don't remember when they told us to go get it checked out, but it wasn't like more than like 2 or 3 weeks.
It wasn't very long.
Yeah, it was fairly quick after we figured that out. And like it wasn't like we did it super urgently because like I wasn't having any symptoms of it. It was
there
just
was no like side effects from
right,
it at
it was
all?
just a big lump. I wasn't like losing energy or, having any soreness or pain or anything anywhere.
That's crazy. So what happens after that? Like you get the diagnosis,
Yeah.
it is cancer. Do they say if it's malignant, if it's like what was...
Yeah, so it's lymphoma, so it's attacking my lymph system, which is like your body's immune system, at least from what I remember. And so it feeds off sugar and everything. So they did scans to figure out like, where it was at, like if it was just in my neck or if it was other places. And they did like some other procedures, like a spinal tap and like a bone marrow sample. Like they went in and took a bunch of stuff. And luckily it was only in my neck. And like they saw some other spots that it was maybe in, but it hadn't gotten into like my bone marrow or anything, which is when it's really serious.
Really bad.
Yeah. And so they found that out, and then I don't remember how long it was. I think they told me what was going to happen, and this was in December. And then they wanted to start chemo earlier, but they didn't want to do it like right before Christmas because they were like, that's depressing.
That's so sad. So you didn't do it before Christmas?
Right. So
okay.
they let us wait until a little bit after. So it was like end of December, maybe it was early January when I had the first round of chemo. So, yeah.
What was the most vivid experience you remember? Was it like the diagnosis of them sitting you down and saying that, or was it a different moment in this process?
I think what I remember the most was like the very first needle biopsy.
Poking you?
Yeah, because it was like, a lot of people think I'm weird. Like, I think it's interesting to watch that. Like, they had an ultrasound, like guiding, and I was
so
like...
you were watching it the whole time?
Yeah.
Oh, I could not do that. I could not do that. Oh.
And so, I don't know. I remember that a lot. Maybe just because that was like the first experience. But I do remember like staying the night over in the hospital, and then they were going to get me in later, but they ended up rushing it. And so I just had the biopsy, like the incision biopsy, which is where I don't know if the scar's showing, but that's where the scar came from. And they just did that like first thing in the morning. So I remember that too. And then they came back, and I think they gave us like a preliminary guess, but then we went home and like they called us later when they had all the results.
What was like the emotions that were going on throughout this? Like 17-year-old Zach, what's going on in his head right then?
That was the weird thing for me. It was like I never really was worried or anxious much. Like, I don't know, it was definitely, I've always had a good relationship with God, and I've always known He was there, but He definitely gave me more of a knowledge of that and more peace and like surety of that as soon as this happened. Like, because it was just, I was going through this and I just never had any doubts or fear really about like dying or...
Really? Like at all?
Not really. Like,
even though like 100, like what's the fatality rate of the cancer? Is it pretty...
It's hard to say because there's so little people who have had it.
Okay.
But like, from the stuff I was able to find out, the survival rate was like 16%.
Whoa.
And like the average time between diagnosis and like how long you lived after that was like 8 months or something.
Whoa.
And so it was also like skewed because it's mostly been older people who have had it. Yeah. And so that gave me a better shot, which my doctors always talked about. My doctors never like straight up talked about the survival
to you
chances.
As a 17-year-old?
Right. And I think part of that was because they really didn't know, because I was one of the first people who had it this young.
Okay.
So they had no idea how like my body
happen?
would respond.
So what were your parents' reactions to this? Like, do you remember your parents responding in any way? I'm sure your mom was terrified.
Yeah, my mom was definitely worried, and she does a good job of putting on like a strong face. Like she knows I wasn't worried, and she doesn't want to worry me by her worrying,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so she does a good job of kind of like, putting on a good face, but I could tell she was worried, and it was hard for her. My dad is, I don't know, my dad's a stoic guy.
He's like impossible to read.
I don't know if he's impossible to read, but he's hard to read. Like, I mean, I love my dad. I respect him more than anybody. But yeah, I mean, I'm sure he was worried at least somewhat, but we kind of just treated things business as usual, honestly.
Business as usual. I just have kids. Okay.
Yeah.
I guess that's nice.
Yeah.
So what happens with the rest of the story? You're diagnosed, you go through some treatments, like you're clearly still alive. How'd you get to this point, I guess?
Yeah, so I had 6 rounds of chemo once every 3 weeks. So they finished in like the end of April was when I had the last one. And like the first couple, it was going down like drastically every time. Like after like the first 2, it was like you could like barely feel it. It was like maybe like a grape.
Went from baseball to grape.
Yeah, and like after the 3rd one, I don't even think I could feel it anymore. They could just still see it on the scans. But then after that, with like 4, 5, and 6, it was hardly going down at all. Like it was going down like very slightly. So they were really worried because like,
you can't leave that there with cancer.
right, because it'll just grow back. Like it doesn't take long if you're not actively fighting it. And so they were kind of talking to me about this as it was going on and being like, it's kind of hard to know what we're going to do if it doesn't go away after these 6 rounds, because like there's lifetime limits with the chemo drugs where like you can't have more than this amount because it's really dangerous like for your long-term health.
Yeah.
And also they were like, if the 6 rounds haven't done it, we don't have reason to suppose that more rounds are going to finish it off.
Okay.
And so they were kind of talking about a lot of different possibilities that might have gone on. But one blessing that I definitely had was my body responded really well to chemo. It wasn't too hard on me. I would have like, it got worse every round. Like every round was worse as it went on, because it was just building up in my body, I guess. But I would usually have like, I would go to the hospital in the morning, and we'd have like the blood draws and like all the tests to make sure I was like healthy, recovered enough from the last chemo to have chemo again. And then I would have chemo like around noon-ish, and they'd put it in, like some of it was like a slow drip. So it'd take about like an hour and a half to get all the chemo drugs in. And then I got to go home, luckily, because usually they kept you in the hospital for it. But I was older, and so I could like drink more fluids to flush it out of my system, because they don't want it sitting in there for a long time.
Yeah, that would be bad.
Right. And so I got to go home after that. But as like in the later rounds, we didn't go home. We just stayed in the area because I was too nauseous to
travel back.
Yeah,
even?
to travel back. I do remember one time we were going home, like the first time when it was really bad, but I still just wanted to go home. And I was like, it was like winter and it was snowing outside.
In Wisconsin.
And I had a coat on, but like not covering my face. And I had the window down, so there was like snow and like cold right on my face, so I wouldn't throw up, which I ended up having to get out of the car and throw up later. But like,
no.
and my poor mom was just in the car, probably freezing too. But I was just like nauseous and like half asleep. So yeah, but I would have like 2 or 3 days of being nauseous, and then, I mean, there's just like regular side effects of like less energy and stuff like that. But it wasn't too hard.
So you went through the 6 rounds, and did you go through all 6 and you finished all 6?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then what happened then? Was the cancer still there?
Yeah.
Is it still there?
It's not still there.
Okay.
It was still there after 6, which is why they were concerned. And so they had like a meeting. They had like a team of doctors from around the country that were they would have a weekly meeting to kind of talk about what to do. And so they were like, I think it was on Thursdays. So they sent me home after the last round, and they were like, it's still there from the scans we can see. And so they said they were going to have their meeting, and then they would call us after that and like let us know what the plan was. But they said that like...
Were your parents in the meeting at all, or was it just like the doctors?
Yeah,
it was just
the doctors.
Okay.
Right. It was just them having like a meeting, like, what's going to work? This kid has a super rare cancer. We don't know what's going to help. Like, we've already tried chemo. Like, figure out what's the best plan. And so they told me, like, before the meeting happened, they were like, you're probably going to have a stem cell transplant, which is like, I think it's the same thing as a bone marrow transplant, or it's like very similar. They have to like take out your bone marrow and replace it with others so that you can make new like stem cells, red blood cells.
Back up again, right?
Yeah, just like try and totally get rid of it. And so that's like a few months in the hospital, and there's a lot of risk involved in that. And then they said I would have radiation combined with that. So there's going to be kind of a lot.
That is a lot.
Yeah, so I was...
Were you scared at this point? Because like it doesn't sound like you've been scared at all. Or were you kind of just like, I got this? Like it's only
I wasn't
cancer.
scared. I was kind of just annoyed. I was like...
What?
I was kind of just... I don't know. This sounds... I don't know. It sounds weird to say, but I was almost just like... I don't know, just like, let me live or let me die. Like, I don't want to go through like 4 months of like all of this stuff like in my body if I'm just going to die at the end of it. I think that was the only thing I was worried about. Like having, you know, if I was going to die at the end of this, my last few months just be like miserable laying in a hospital bed.
Not even able to enjoy.
Right.
Anything.
That's what I didn't want. And so they had their meeting and they came back and they were like, we're going to take a biopsy first, another biopsy. So they did it like the same incision spot. They just made it a little bit wider. And we're going to take out like that last little bit, because with lymphoma, it doesn't matter if you take it out. It'll just grow back because it's like in your cells. So it doesn't matter if you just take out the spot, because that doesn't get rid of the cancer. So they were like, we're going to take it out, which isn't going to stop the cancer, but we're going to test it and make sure it's still cancer and not just like scar tissue, basically, because that would be eating up sugar in your body too, which is what the scans are.
Similar to the, got it.
Right, because it's healing that area. But like from the way they were talking about it, it really didn't seem like that was a high possibility.
They were just like, this might happen.
Right, they were like, we're going to throw this kid through a lot in the next 4 months. If it's not cancer, we want to, you know, be able to avoid that. Like we got to make sure, absolutely sure it's cancer before we put him through all this stuff.
Okay.
But I could tell they didn't think it was a super high possibility.
Interesting. So we've kind of gone through like a physical creation of this story. We've gone through a lot of the medical and like the specifics and like the timing and the place. What's like the spiritual side of this? We're here to look at your walk with Christ.
Yeah.
What was that like? Like with your family and with yourself? How did he walk with you through this experience?
Yeah. So, I mean, one thing that was kind of hard is we couldn't go to church for a while because we had to stay home in quarantine because your immune system's down.
You just can't risk any.
Right. Because, like, I mean, you've got to take special pills because there's, like, certain strains of pneumonia and stuff that are, like, everywhere, but your immune system's normally just strong enough that it kills them really easily. But a chemo patient's immune system is not.
No,
so, like,
you have to
be very careful. But it was good because people from the ward, our local church, like, still reached out a lot. And, like, sometimes the youth would come over and we had, like, a bonfire in the back because it was outside, so we could, like, mitigate the germs and everything. And so that was good to still have that contact. And I felt really connected to God through the whole time. And my family, which like I look at as a gift from God, was there with me the whole time too. Like my brother would usually come along to the chemo things just so we could like play games after. So we'd play games or watch shows or something when I was just kind of like laying on the couch or the bed, just like
done with everything.
Yeah. And so like I just, the nurses always commented on how cheerful I was, because I was just joking around and like just being my goofy self like the whole time.
You're pretty goofy.
And they always commented on that, like how I didn't lose that. I almost feel like I got like more extroverted and like more bubbly during cancer. I don't really know why, but like coming out here on a mission, I honestly thank cancer for like developing some of those skills, because I don't know what it was, but I just got way better at talking to random people, which is
just for fun.
Yeah, which is something we do all the time on the mission. And so I don't know, that was really helpful for me, and I just saw lots of little things over time that I knew God was helping me do that I realized afterwards. But mostly how I felt him and how I knew I was walking with him is just the peace and the lack of worry and anxiety that I always had, and being able to have, really heartfelt prayers and just communicate with my family and be able to be normal because I trusted in his plan for me. I knew that whatever was going to happen, it was going to turn out to be good.
No matter whatever happened,
No matter what.
you truly felt that no matter the outcome, even if it resulted in death, it would be okay.
Yeah, I really didn't have any concerns about that.
Really?
Yeah.
Where did that come from?
God, I don't know. It was like it was just a gift from him. I didn't really do anything to gain it, just like everything else with our salvation. It was a gift that I'm very grateful for.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So you're alive standing here today.
Yeah.
And the doctor council is going on in our story right now.
Right.
What did the doctors decide?
Yeah, so they said they would do the biopsy, and then they did say, like, if it is cancer, like, you're going to have the stem cell transplant and the radiation and everything. And so we went in, and I had the biopsy, and we were kind of waiting to hear back. And then this is like, I hadn't really prayed to God at all about the cancer specifically. Like, I'd been connected with him, and I'd been having my regular prayers and just kind of, talking to him.
Was it kind of like the elephant in the room a little bit with
A
the
little
prayer
bit.
sometimes?
Yeah, it was like, I don't want to ask because I don't really want to know. Like,
oh, yeah, okay.
I'm
Ignorance
like,
is bliss until it happens, right?
Right, exactly. Like, I was like, I don't want to ask and then find out, like, I'm going to die at the end of, like, all of these treatments and things. Because, like, I don't want to know that. I want to still be able to have some hope, I guess. So I hadn't really prayed that candidly about it. But during this time of waiting, I decided that it was time to. And so one morning, I think I might have been in the shower when I was praying.
So, that's awesome. The biggest prayer of your life, and it has to be in the shower.
Yeah, that's where you always have all the best brain thoughts. In the shower. Yep. Have the moments of revelation. So I just prayed like kind of all the questions that I hadn't really given voice to this whole time. Just like, am I going to die? Like, am I going to go through all these treatments? Like, or is the cancer gone? Like, what's going on, basically? Like, just kind of like poured my heart out on all those questions I had been holding back. And it was a really cool experience. And it was, I had exercised that faith to ask that question, because everything we get from God is a gift, but he does ask us to do things and follow things in order to gain it. Not because he's, sitting up there holding back blessings from us, but because he's already given us the gift and he's trying to teach us how to open it. That's how I always look at it.
I like that.
So my way of opening that revelation he wanted to give me and that peace he wanted to give me was to pray about it. And after I asked all those questions, I just heard a very clear voice in my head that said, "Son, you're all done fighting." And so I took that and I kind of thought about it for a second. It was really peaceful also. I forgot to mention that, but like before the words came, it was just like a big like
a hush before a storm kind of?
Yeah, it was just like big feeling of peace. Like, it just, I don't know, I can't even describe it, but it was just peace and love, and like everything just felt like warm and just, I don't know, like home, just comfortable. And so then, "Son, you're all done fighting." And I thought about it, and I didn't ask this question like worriedly, but I asked, like, does that mean I'm going to die? Like, I mean, because that would stop me from fighting.
And that is, I guess, the next logical question. You're just like, well, wow. And so you didn't ask it, but you thought, is that what
I did ask it.
Oh, you
I
did ask
that question, yeah. So I asked, like, am I going to die? I wasn't worried about it, but I was just like, it's logical to ask that. And he said, no, because I have more work for you to do. And so I mean, I kind of took that, and I just had this big feeling of peace, and I just kind of thought about it, and I went throughout my day. I don't remember if I told my parents about it. I might have.
Have you told your parents
Yeah,
about it?
yes.
You have now,
yes,
okay.
I have now. I don't remember if I told them like before we got the news.
Oh, so they may have just been worried the whole time, and you're just happy as a
I'm
clam.
pretty sure I told them
Okay.
about it, because I wouldn't have wanted them to be worrying about that. I'm pretty sure I told them. I don't remember the exact experience, but yeah. So the doctors called and in a couple days, but I already knew my answer. So like I wasn't even really waiting for it anymore, because I knew that the cancer was gone. Because
You knew from like that statement that
Yeah.
God said that like there was no cancer when
right,
they
he
took
was
the
like,
biopsy.
you're all done fighting, and you're not gonna die because I have more work for you to do. I was like, okay, guess the cancer's gone. Like, I'm all done fighting, no more treatments, but I'm also not gonna die. So like, guess
That's the only
we're
right.
good. So that's what I took from it, and that's what I just believed. I was like, okay, the cancer's gone. Like, that's what I'm gonna put faith in. That's what I'm gonna trust in. God gave me this answer. I'm gonna use it. I'm gonna live by it. Because if He gives us this gift, He teaches us how to open it, and then we take it out and we're like, no, I don't want it. We put it back.
I'll
Like,
pass on that.
He's not gonna give us any more.
Yeah.
We're not gonna see any more of those gifts, because we've already just thrown one out the window. And so both like in just my continual relationship with God, I knew it was important that I would keep and use that gift, but also just because, I mean, that was nice to know I wasn't going to die. That was
Just a little bit.
having cancer, yeah. And so the doctors called a couple days later with the results from the biopsy, and it wasn't cancer, it was just scar tissue.
It was just scar tissue.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah, so the cancer was gone. They were like super excited. I was like, okay, cool. Like,
Knew it.
I already knew that. But yeah, I think we went and saw like Endgame or something right after that.
Right
'Cause
after
it had
that?
been, well, I think we waited a little bit until like that last round of chemo had like been long enough that my immune system was kind of back up to normal.
And you could like re-enter
Right,
normal
and so
interactions in
we
society.
went to the theater. I could go out out into the city again, I guess.
That's
as
so
city as
cool.
you get in rural Wisconsin. But yeah, we went and watched, I think it was Endgame or Infinity War or something.
Something like that. That's so
Yeah.
cool. I guess one question I wanted to ask is, you've commented that you've had this like sensation of peace throughout the whole time, and you kind of were a very optimistic person going through it. If you weren't optimistic about it, if you'd kind of lacked that choice to be hopeful, how would the experience have been different for you and your family, would you say?
Man, I mean, like, I think about that a lot in general terms, not even just this specific experience, but like with just how the world is going today, like all of the death and the like, all of these horrible things are happening. And when I hear people talk about that who I know don't believe in God, I just kind of, my heart kind of breaks for them, because I don't know how you could, I don't know what would like keep you sane if you didn't believe in, like heaven and being able to be with your family and with God again, and that Jesus Christ has atoned for our sins and he's saved the world.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what I would have done in my experience without knowing that. It would have just been, I mean, instead of looking at it like I did, I found a lot to learn from and a lot to gain from that experience. Like we talked about with music earlier, I got a Make-A-Wish because I was still 17 when it happened, and because that's how you can know that they thought I was gonna die.
They gave you a Make-A-Wish, and they were like, all right, we got to do something for him.
And so I got a really nice piano and like recording stuff, and was able to record some of my piano arrangements and things. And so like there's just all these blessings that I've seen from that, and growing so much closer to God, and like I said, being more like extroverted and happy.
Yeah.
I think cancer made me more happy than I was before. Just like all throughout the experience, because you're not able to feel the joy unless you feel the pain, right? And I think I almost just skipped the step of feeling the pain and just kind of replaced it with the joy that Christ was able to give me. That hole that would have been filled with pain, like those emotions, he just flipped them around and turned it into joy and happiness, and gave me so much more from it. And I don't know what I would have done if it was pain instead of joy.
Yeah.
If that's all that I felt, it would have instead have been like something I can learn from and gain from, and something that can ultimately be for good, like everything in God's plan, it would have just been like something irritating to go through. Like there would have been no upsides, no happiness, no anything. It's just, I have to stay home, I can't do this, I'm nauseous, I have no energy.
Like awful.
Yeah, like it's just all negatives. That's all it would have been.
That's interesting. What would you say to those people that maybe are going through something like this, that they're waiting for that moment of peace and joy? Like, what would you say to people that maybe it's not even a medical challenge, maybe it's a mental health challenge, or maybe it's something else? What would you say to people that are struggling to find the peace that Jesus Christ offers us?
Yeah, and I've struggled with mental health myself too. Not really in relation to cancer, just on the mission. I've kind of started dealing with depression and things, and it's been something that I definitely didn't understand until I experienced it. That feeling of like you're just sad and down and you don't want to do anything, and there's no reason why. There's no good reason. I've had it when I've had people that I really loved teaching on the mission, and everything was going great. We were talking to lots of people about the gospel, and it was awesome, but I didn't care. Like I had fun when I was like there teaching them, but like the instant that was done, it was like, what does it matter anymore? Like, why am I here? Like, so all of those sorts of challenges, like they're all very real, right? And people struggle with so many different things, and there's so much that we can't understand without going through something like that personally. And I would just say that you don't have to wait to have Christ's peace. Christ's peace is different from the world's peace. Like it says in John 14, he gives us peace not as the world giveth, but his peace. And I think the difference with that is Christ's peace, or the world's peace would have us remove all sorrow, remove all trials, remove all obstacles, remove all the negatives, and then you're only left with good. But Christ's peace is giving you good through all the trials and all the negative. It's like I said, turning that negative into a positive. Not just removing all the negative, but making those things a positive and allowing you to have hope and peace and joy through him always.
That's really cool. I like that. I guess kind of as we wrap up, what would you say, like what do you know about Jesus Christ what do you know of Jesus Christ from your life experience specifically? What have you learned about him?
I know that he's always there. That's one of the biggest things I learned, and he's there for everybody. And there is not a person on this world who has gone through a trial or a struggle, and Jesus Christ is not reaching out to them. That he wants nothing more than to do, what he's promised to do for all of us and save us and help us and heal us from these things that he has, or that we experience. And I think that's the main thing I've learned. He's always there to turn the bad into good. That's what Christ does for us.
Thank you for sharing that. Do you have any last words you want to leave with people before we wrap up?
I think there's a scripture actually that's coming to mind. One that's one of my favorites. And this wasn't one that I found like through, while I was going through cancer. I don't remember when I found this scripture, but it's something that kind of relates to what I've been sharing and talking about. And it's from the Book of Mormon, which teaches us about Jesus Christ, just like the Bible does. And this is in the book of Ether, chapter 12, verse 4. And it says, "Wherefore, whoso believeth in God might with surety hope for a better world, yea, even a place at the right hand of God, which hope cometh of faith, maketh an anchor to the souls of men, which would make them sure and steadfast, always abounding in good works, being led to glorify God." And so that scripture to me means a lot, because I know that all of you that are out there, and all of you that may be going through something and struggling with something, I know that even if it doesn't feel possible now, that your hope, the hope that maybe you have or maybe you hope to be able to gain, will save you, and it will give you a sure anchor. I love all of the words that uses, with surety you can hope for a better world, and it makes an anchor, and it makes us sure and steadfast. I love all of those words. And just the world's hope and the world's peace is so often looked at as something almost fantastic to gain. But I know that Christ's hope and Christ's peace is always there as long as we're willing to turn to Him. And I know that all of you are able to turn to Christ, and that He is calling out to you right now, and that He wants you to be able to feel and experience all the blessings that He suffered and died to be able to give you.
Thank you for sharing that. Well, thank you all for joining us on Walking with Christ. We hope that your walk with Christ this week is a little bit more hopeful from the story we've heard from our friend Elder Lockhart. We hope you guys have a great week.
Hi there, I'm Sister Sumption, and thank you for choosing to grow closer to Jesus Christ with us. We are members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and our focus is to help others learn about Jesus Christ and change their lives by becoming new through the atonement of Jesus Christ. We can help you learn about Him and how His restored gospel can help you. Comment below this video or message us to learn more today.